Welcome to Crushed Husband. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. If someone had told me 2 years ago I'd be gripping the edge of my bathroom sink just to brush my teeth, I would have laughed them right out the door. My name is Ruben Masterson. I'm 65 years old, and I live alone in a condo in Cedar Falls, Iowa. It's not a fancy place, but it's mine, and it still has her touch everywhere. Clarice passed 6 years ago, but her presence lingers in the shape of the floral curtains, the silly ceramic turtle collection by the windowsill, and the framed photo of us feeding lemurs in Madagascar. God, she loved animals. We both did. Back then, I ran the Hawkeye Zoo administrator for nearly 20 years. Spent my weekends volunteering with wildlife rescue centers, bandaging injured hawks and bottle-feeding orphaned raccoons. I used to move nonstop, always one foot in front of the other. The animals needed me. The staff needed me. Now, I can barely open a damn jar. The diagnosis came last spring, early onset Parkinson's disease. Tremors, stiffness, slowness, you name it. At first I thought it was just getting older, but when I dropped a coffee mug 3 mornings in a row, I knew something wasn't right. The neurologist delivered the news with that polished calm they probably teach in medical school. It's manageable, she said, especially with early intervention. Manageable, my ass. Some mornings, I can't get the button on my jeans to cooperate. I've had to stop driving, stopped volunteering, even gave away my old hiking boots. I kept one pair, though, shoved in the back of the closet, just in case. I've been careful not to ask for help. I don't like the idea of being looked after. I never did, but I'm not stupid. I know it's coming. The moment when I'll need more than a hand on a staircase or a ride to the pharmacy. And that's where Brant comes in, or at least he should. Brant's my only son. 43, lives down in Des Moines, logistics consultant, whatever that means. He's efficient, driven, organized, probably has his whole day color-coded in Google Calendar. But warm? Not really, not since Clarice passed. I don't know what happened, but something in him closed off. I call him every couple of weeks, sometimes just to hear someone say my name. He always answers, always polite, but we talk like co-workers, not father and son. His wife Leslie doesn't help matters. She's sharp, assertive, and allergic to silence. Last Christmas, she gave me a book on decluttering for seniors. Not even a sweater, just a veiled suggestion that I might want to start sorting my life into labeled donation bins. They're coming up this weekend, Brant, Leslie, and the kids. Mason and Ivy. I haven't seen them since Thanksgiving. I'm bracing for it. The polite smiles, the awkward silences. Leslie noticing the delivery meals in my fridge and pretending not to judge. I keep wondering if Brant notices. The tremor in my left hand. The way I hesitate before standing. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't want to. Clarice would have known exactly what to say. But she's not here. And I don't want to be a burden, not yet. But I also don't want to disappear. And that's the quiet fear curling up in my chest as I stand here, toothbrush shaking in my fist, that they've already started treating me like I'm fading. And maybe, just maybe, I am. I watched their SUV pull into the driveway, the kind with tinted windows and a license plate frame that read, "Live Smart." Mason and Ivy tumbled out first, not even glancing at the house before strapping on their VR headsets and disappearing into whatever pixelated universe they preferred. Leslie stepped out next, crisp in white linen pants and a light pink blouse, already scanning my place like a realtor checking comps. Brant came around from the driver's side, with that same expression he always wore when visiting me. Tight smile, guarded eyes, a mental clock already ticking. "Hey, Dad," Brant said, hugging me with one arm, his hand barely touching my shoulder. "You look okay." "Still vertical," I replied, trying to smile. "That counts for something." Leslie leaned in and kissed the air beside my cheek. "We made it just before dinner, thank God. I'm starving." "What are we having?" "Chicken marsala," I said, "from Franco's. Thought I'd keep it simple." She blinked. "Franco's? You mean takeout?" "It's hot and good," I said, already regretting my choice. Didn't seem worth burning the house down to prove I can still use a stove. Leslie made a tight-lipped smile. "Right, well, I'm in the middle of a raw foods phase." "Brant didn't tell you?" "He didn't," I said, walking toward the kitchen table with a slow shuffle. My left foot dragged a little more than I wanted it to. By the time I sat down, Ivy was under the table muttering to herself about some virtual zoo, and Mason was swiping at invisible enemies with both hands. I couldn't even see their faces. I hadn't seen them in months, and now they were in my dining room like ghosts. "Kids," Leslie said, in a tone that didn't rise much above indifference. "Say hi to Grandpa." They didn't look up. Ivy mumbled something that might have been hi. Mason didn't say a word. Brant sat down beside me and unfolded a cloth napkin like he was at a board meeting. "How's the tremor?" "Uncooperative," I said, "but I still beat the microwave clock sometimes." He gave a small nod. "Well, I've been looking into long-term options." I paused, knife trembling just enough to rattle against the plate. "Options for what?" Brant exhaled like this was just the beginning of a very reasonable PowerPoint. "Assisted living, or something they call a wellness residence now. It's basically a facility but more modern, efficient." I put my knife down slowly. "You've been looking into putting me away." "It's not putting you away," he said, brows furrowed. "It's about being proactive." "Is it?" I said. "I thought I was still using the bathroom on my own." Leslie jumped in. "It's not about now, Reuben. It's about trajectory. You don't want to wait until it's too late. These places have specialists, social events, massage chairs." "Massage chairs?" I said, my voice rising just enough to make Ivy flinch. "I've got Clarice's rocking chair and a view of the river. I don't need a damn chair that vibrates to remind me I'm still alive." Brant's voice cooled. "We're just trying to think ahead, Dad. This can't fall on us overnight." That part landed with a thud. Leslie stabbed at her salad with surgical precision, and Brant stared at the wall like it held the solution. I realized then, they weren't talking about my future. They were trying to relocate a problem, and that problem was me. I looked at the kids, still locked into their virtual worlds, and for the first time since Clarice died, I felt truly invisible. Not old, not sick, just omitted. "Thanks for the meal," Brant said, standing. "We should get going soon. Mason has a robotics camp in the morning." And that was it. That was the visit. I didn't walk them out, didn't force a goodbye hug. I sat at that table long after they left, staring at 2 untouched plates and an empty seat across from mine that would never be filled again. Clarice would have known exactly what to say to them, but all I had left was the sound of a fork ticking against porcelain and the steady, quiet hum of being replaced. The condo was quiet again. Too quiet. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wheeze of traffic outside. I sat in the same chair from dinner, my plate still on the table, the marsala gone cold. I couldn't make myself get up. My body ached in places that weren't physical. They'd been gone maybe 30 minutes. Brant's SUV peeled out of the driveway like they couldn't wait to escape. Mason never took off that damn headset. Ivy looked at me once, but it was more like glancing at a piece of old furniture. And Brant? Well, Brant made his point loud and clear. A wellness residence. Like I was an unclaimed package, just waiting for someone to reroute me. I picked up my fork and tapped it gently against the edge of my plate. It slipped once, clattered to the floor. I didn't bother picking it up. My hand was too shaky now. I kept picturing the look on Brant's face when he said it, like he'd practiced the line beforehand, rehearsed just how to say it like it wasn't personal. Like logistics. Of course it was personal. I sat there long enough for the shadows to stretch across the room. Finally, I forced myself up and walked stiffly to the hall closet. Top shelf, behind a box of Clarice's scarves, was a black zippered pouch with my bank paperwork. I brought it to the kitchen and spread the contents across the table. 3 savings accounts, 2 IRAs, 1 CD, all in $460,000. Clarice and I had saved for travel, for emergencies, for whatever comes. This was what came. They wanted to put me away like I was already half gone. But what if I gave them a reason not to? What if I made them an offer too good to ignore? I sat back, thinking. Brant and Leslie had always talked about upgrading from their townhouse. More space, closer to better schools. They'd mentioned it even when Clarice was still here. The problem was always the same: money. So, what if I gave it to them? They could buy a home near me. I'd give them the full amount. No strings except one. I'd move in with them. Not as a burden, not as a patient, but as part of the family. We could set up a private suite or a basement apartment, something dignified. I'd pitch in for home care if needed. They'd get the house they always wanted. I'd stay out of a facility. Win-win. And maybe, just maybe, the kids would finally see me as something other than background noise. I pulled out a yellow notepad and started writing. Bullet points, numbers, terms. My handwriting wobbled, but the ideas were steady. This could work. It had to. When I finished, I sat back and looked at Clarice's picture on the bookshelf. She was feeding a lemur in that one, grinning like a fool. Crazy, huh? I muttered. But maybe not stupid. She didn't say anything, of course, but I could almost hear her laugh. I'd pitch it to Brant this week. I just had to show him that I wasn't asking to be taken care of. I was offering something valuable. I still had value, didn't I? Brant showed up on Wednesday during his lunch break. I watched from the window as he pulled up, hands-free headset still stuck in his ear. The man never stopped working. He didn't knock, just let himself in with the spare key like he always did. "Hey, Dad," he said, glancing at his phone as he stepped inside. "Sorry, I've only got about 20 minutes. "That's plenty," I said, motioning for him to sit. "I won't keep you long." He took the chair across from me at the kitchen table. I had already laid out the folder, statements, notes, and a single page titled Proposal. It wasn't fancy, just my own words printed in bold, Times New Roman. Brant scanned the heading, then looked up at me, puzzled. "I've been thinking," I said, steadying my hands in my lap, "about what you mentioned, the wellness place." He shifted in his chair. "Dad, I wasn't trying to pressure you." "I know," I said, "but I've got another idea." I slid the folder toward him. "That's everything I've got saved, $460,000. Clarice and I built that together. I want to offer it to you, all of it." His eyebrows twitched. He looked down at the figure like it had physically startled him. "There's a condition," I said, voice even. "You and Leslie use it to buy a house, bigger than your current place, something near here. And you set up a space for me, a suite, basement, whatever works. I'll contribute monthly if needed. I don't expect you to take care of me. I just want to stay with family, not end up in some place full of strangers." Brant stared at the number again, lips slightly parted. "You're serious?" "I am," I said. "Dead serious." He leaned back, silent. The gears were already turning. I knew that look. He was weighing mortgage rates and school district ratings, not the human offer on the table. Then he blinked and sat forward. "I mean, this is huge," he said. Well, I'd have to talk to Leslie." "Of course," I said quickly. "I wouldn't expect you to decide right now." He closed the folder gently, almost reverently. "This would be life-changing for us, Dad." "I know," I said. "That's the idea." We stood. He patted my shoulder. "I'll talk to her tonight. Give me a couple of days." I nodded. He was already halfway to the door when he turned back. "Thanks. Really?" Then he was gone. For the next 2 days, I floated. I caught myself imagining what it might be like, sitting out on a shared porch with Ivy asking about Clarice's turtle collection, or Mason helping me with the TV remote, or even Leslie walking through the door without the usual thin-lipped tension. But Brant didn't call, not that night, not the next. I waited. I tried not to seem desperate, but I found myself checking my phone too often. By Sunday, I sent him a quick message. Just checking in. Any thoughts on the proposal? No response. The silence felt familiar, too familiar. I told myself he was busy. I told myself it was a lot to take in. But deep down, something in me had already started to bristle. Not because he needed time, but because he hadn't said no. He just hadn't said anything at all. It had been 9 days since Brant sat across from me at the table and said, "This would be life-changing." 9 days since he took that folder, my life, my savings, Clarice's memory and numbers, and walked out the door with a promise to talk to Leslie. And then silence. No updates, no questions, not even a text. By day 6, I'd stopped giving him the benefit of the doubt. By day 7, I'd started waking up earlier just to stare at my phone and confirm he still hadn't called. On day 9, I asked Maxine to take me to the bank. Maxine was my neighbor, 71, sharp as a tack, and the only person in the building who still knocked before entering. She used to be a nurse, so she didn't flinch at the tremor in my left hand or the way my voice caught when I got tired. She treated me like a person, not a patient. That was rare these days. She picked me up in her Subaru around 10, already sipping her second coffee. "You sure you don't want to call him one more time first?" she asked as we pulled onto Riverbend Drive. "No," I said. "I want to move some funds around. That's all." She didn't push. After the bank, we stopped at a small cafe across from the park, one of those cozy places with oversized mugs and crooked wooden chairs. Maxine ordered something with oat milk. I stuck to black coffee and tried to get my fingers around the cup without spilling. We were halfway through a quiet moment when I heard it, Brant's voice. At first I wasn't sure. It was muffled, low, but familiar. Then I saw him. 2 tables over, tucked near the corner window. Not alone. Across from him sat a woman in a blazer, laptop open, pad of paper in front of her. A realtor. Maxine looked up, following my gaze. "Is that your son?" I didn't answer. I just listened. Brant leaned forward, lowering his voice, but not enough to block it out. "We're looking at coastal, ideally. Close to the water. Maybe something with 4 bedrooms. Doesn't need to be around here. I work remote most days now." The woman nodded, scribbling. "And financing?" "We'll have the cash up front," Brant said casually. "Got a big transfer coming. My dad's downsizing. We're helping him transition into care. He doesn't need much." My stomach clenched. He kept talking. "I've already toured one facility. It's clean, private. Nothing fancy, but it's got memory support and weekly piano nights or whatever." "Memory support?" Brant laughed lightly. "The best part is he thinks it's his idea. He practically pitched it like a business deal, so we'll let him feel in control until the money clears." I couldn't move. The words didn't make sense at first. They just bounced around my skull like pebbles in a jar. Maxine placed her hand gently on my arm. "Reuben," she whispered, but I didn't respond. Brant finished his coffee and stood, shaking the realtor's hand. "We're talking just under $550 all cash. If the inspection's clean, we can move quick. Just need him out of the way first." He walked out smiling. I stayed frozen in place, watching the door swing shut behind him. The air in the cafe felt heavier somehow. My coffee had gone cold. My hands weren't trembling anymore. But not because the Parkinson's had eased. I was just numb. I had offered him everything. And he was planning to ship me off, take the money, and vanish to some oceanfront dream home. Maxine didn't say a word. She just sat there, hands folded around her mug, watching me as I blinked slowly, trying to breathe through the sting. The worst part wasn't that he lied. It was that he'd never even considered telling the truth. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. I sat at the kitchen table, same chair, same window view. The street outside was dark and still. The only thing moving was my own hand, shaking slightly as I gripped the phone and called the bank. The woman on the other end spoke with a calm, almost syrupy voice. "Mr. Masterson, I can place a temporary freeze on all transfer activity today. Yes. Would you like that noted for an indefinite period?" "Yes," I said, teeth clenched. "Effective immediately. No withdrawals, no wires, no changes." "Understood." She confirmed my identity, walked me through the steps, and by the time I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. It didn't last long. By morning, Brant was at my door. He didn't knock, just barged in like he always did. No smile this time, just that pinched look, like someone had shorted his paycheck. "You froze the account," he said, before I could even speak. I didn't get up. "Good morning, Brant." He ignored that. "You told me you'd be transferring the money by Friday." "I changed my mind," I said calmly. "Plans have changed." Brant laughed, sharp and bitter. "What the hell, Dad? We had an agreement." "No," I said. "We had a conversation. You said you'd talk to Leslie. Then I didn't hear a word for 9 days." He walked over to the table, placing both hands on it like a lawyer cornering a witness. "Do you realize what this does to us? I've been calling mortgage brokers, scheduling tours." "I know," I cut in. "I heard you." He blinked. "Heard me?" "At the cafe," I said, my voice steady but low. "You were with a realtor, talking about a house by the beach, out of state. You said I'd be transitioned into care. You said it was the best part, that I thought it was my idea." His face drained of color. You were spying on me?" "I was buying coffee," I said. "You were running your mouth." Brant straightened. "It's not what it sounded like." "Don't," I snapped. "Don't stand there and try to flip the script. I heard every word. You were going to take the money and dump me." His jaw tightened. "It wasn't like that?" "No." "Then tell me what it was like," I said. "Tell me what your plan was. What would have happened to me once you closed on that house?" He didn't answer, just looked down, lips pressed thin. "I'm not a suitcase you can check into storage, Brant," I said. "I'm your father." Silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. "You're being paranoid. You're sick. You need help, and you don't trust the people who are actually trying to help you. I stood up, slower than I wanted to, but I stood. If this is your idea of help, I'll take care of myself. So that's it, he said. You're just cutting me off, after offering everything? I nodded. The offer's off the table, permanently. He stared at me like he didn't recognize who I was. Like the version of me he'd known, compliant, quiet, grateful, had been replaced with someone inconvenient. You'll regret this, he said quietly. No, I said. I regret trusting you with my future. That ends today. He left without another word, just turned and walked out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the shelf where Clarice's turtle figurines sat. I waited, listening to his car peel away down the street. Then I sank into my chair and let the tremor in my hand shake free. I wasn't alone yet, but I was done begging to be kept. It took me 3 days to pick up the phone. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wasn't sure I could say it without sounding like a desperate old man grasping at what little dignity he had left. But I finally did it. Wednesday afternoon, after Maxine convinced me to get out of the house and take a walk around the pond, I came home, sat on the edge of my bed, and called Harper Jennings. She answered on the second ring. "Reuben," she said, her voice warm, curious. "It's been a while," I said, voice catching slightly. "Too long." "Over a year," she replied. "I think the last time was that awkward community lecture at the library, remember? The one where the projector broke and we all ended up reading off printed slides." I smiled. "I remember. You made it bearable." "Well, I had to rescue the reputation of the whole history department somehow," she said. I hesitated. "Would you have time for tea, just to catch up?" She didn't even pause. "Name the place." We met the next afternoon at a small cafe near campus, tucked between a used bookstore and an antique toy shop. She looked the same, jeans, cardigan, hair in a messy bun that somehow still looked graceful. I could see her father in her face, especially in the way she smiled without reservation. Gary Jennings had been my best friend for 30 years. Clarice always said the two of us were basically wolves in zoo uniforms, loyal, stubborn, and always circling the same ground. He'd passed away 5 years ago, and I missed him more than I let on. "I was surprised to hear from you," Harper said, stirring honey into her tea. "But I'm glad," I nodded. "I've been thinking a lot, about people who matter." She studied me. "Is this about your diagnosis?" I looked down at my hand, which had started to twitch. "Partly. I've got help with the medical side of things. What I don't have is someone who sees me, someone who doesn't treat me like a shipment to reroute." Her brow furrowed. "Brant?" I made him an offer. Tried to buy my way into staying part of the family. I sighed. He accepted the money, in his head, not the terms. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I took a breath. "I want to propose something to you. Strange, maybe, but real." She blinked. "Okay." "I have money," I said. "Enough to live on, enough to share. What I don't have is a future that makes any damn sense. I need help, yes, but not full-time yet. Someone to come by a few times a week, help with groceries, pick up meds, talk, sit, be human." She leaned in slightly. "I'd pay you," I added, "a monthly salary, something fair. And when the time comes, if this works out, I'd like to leave you everything." Harper stared at me, blinking slowly. "Reuben, that's—" "I know," I said quickly. "It's a lot. I'm not asking for a nurse or a maid. I'm asking for someone I trust. Someone who doesn't see me as a job to manage." She looked down at her tea, lips pressed together. "You don't have to answer now," I said. "Think about it. Sleep on it. Tell me no if you need to. Just—" I wanted to ask. She looked up again, her voice softer. "Give me a day?" "Of course," I said. As we stood to leave, she hugged me. A real hug. No hesitation, no pity. And for the first time in a long time, I left the cafe not feeling like a problem. I felt like a person. Harper came back the next evening, just as the sun was sliding down behind the sycamores. I saw her through the living room window, walking up the path with a tote bag slung over one shoulder, and something determined in her stride. She knocked, even though I told her she didn't have to. I opened the door slowly, leaning heavier than usual on the frame. She stepped in, warm breeze following behind her, and gave me a smile that was more serious than cheerful. "I brought my laptop," she said, and a legal pad. I thought we could go over everything. We sat at the kitchen table, me in my usual spot, her in the chair Brant once used like he was just passing through. She opened the laptop, clicked around, and pulled out a pen. "I thought a lot about what you said," she began. "I talked to no one, because I knew if I did, they'd all try to talk me out of it." "Did you need talking out of it?" I asked gently. She looked up. "At first, it's a lot. The money, the responsibility, the permanence of it. But then I remembered something my dad used to say about you." I raised an eyebrow. "Do I want to hear this?" She smiled. "He said, 'Ruben's the only man I trust to put the animals first, even when people start acting like animals themselves.'" I laughed. "Sounds about right." Harper glanced down at her notebook. "So, I'm in. With conditions, not legal ones, just moral. Lay them on me." "I don't want to be your employee," she said. "Not really. I'll accept the monthly stipend, and I'll help you with errands and doctor visits and whatever else comes. But this isn't about a paycheck." I nodded, already liking where this was going. "And when the time comes," she added, quieter now, "if I'm still here, if you still want me to be, I'll be here for the hard stuff too. But we adjust as we go. We talk, we check in. And if something feels wrong, we fix it." "Fair," I said. "More than fair." She slid a draft document across the table. "It outlines visits, a flexible schedule, and a clause to revise things if your condition changes." I kept the language simple. I picked up the paper, letting my eyes move across it slowly. It was neat, clean, thoughtful. There was care in it. "I had a lawyer friend look at it," she said. "Confidentially." "I trust you," I said. "Clarice would have too." She paused. "Do you want to talk about the will now or later?" "Now's fine," I said. "I've already contacted my attorney. Everything, savings, condo, personal effects, will go to you. Not as payment, not as a reward. Because I believe you'll use it wisely, and because I want someone I trust to decide what stays and what goes." Her throat tightened a little, but she nodded. "Okay." We both signed the agreement that night, initialing the margins like real professionals. No handshakes, just quiet understanding. Afterward, I made tea. Badly. She laughed when I spilled a little on the counter. "I should start training now," she said, grabbing a towel. "Apparently your tea-pouring form needs serious work." We sat on the couch, sipping and talking about nothing. The neighbor's garden, her overworked students, a stray cat she'd almost adopted last month. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something bad to happen. I was beginning something real. The days settled into a rhythm that, strangely, felt like peace. Harper started with short visits, twice a week at first, always bringing a tote bag stuffed with books, a meal she'd cooked, and a notepad full of reminders. She had a way of moving through the condo that didn't make me feel like I was being looked after, just included. By the third month, she came 4 days a week. By the fifth, she was living in the guest room full time. We never talked about the exact moment it changed, no ceremony, no announcement. One day she was helping me put on my shoes, and the next, she was unpacking her coffee grinder and leaving a pair of sneakers by the door. The Parkinsons crept forward like a tide I couldn't push back. I moved slower. My fingers no longer obeyed small tasks like sealing an envelope or buttoning a shirt cuff. I couldn't write in a straight line anymore. Couldn't sign my name without hesitation. My voice, too, began to drop into a tremble at the end of each sentence, like my lungs were learning how to forget. But I wasn't afraid. Not like I used to be. Harper was never hurried, never pitying. She read aloud while I rested, let me win at board games, even though I was sure she didn't mean to. She brought books I could still follow, stories about old cities and lost civilizations, places I'd never go but felt close to in the quiet. At night, we watched nature documentaries or old zoo footage from the archive I still had on DVD. I'd point out the giraffe I bottle-fed, or the tiger that hated everyone but Clarice. She always asked questions, not because she was trying to fill the silence, but because she really wanted to know the answers. And there was laughter, real, stupid laughter. Once she tried to fix my squeaky cabinet hinge and ended up locking herself inside the pantry for a full 3 minutes before I could drag a chair over and pop it open. We laughed so hard she cried, and I laughed so hard I nearly fell out of the chair. It felt good to not be a man on borrowed time, just a man with a squeaky pantry and a terrible hinge. Brant never called, not once. Leslie sent a generic holiday card, unsigned. I stopped expecting anything from that direction. Maxine still checked in, dropped off fresh bread or crossword books she found at estate sales. I told her about Harper one afternoon over tea. "Good," she said, grinning. Everyone deserves someone who listens like that. Some mornings I'd wake up before Harper, lie in bed with the sun coming through the curtain, just enough to light up the turtle figurines Clarice once arranged on the dresser. They hadn't moved. They never would. And that was oddly comforting. The condo, which once felt like a waiting room, had become a place that pulsed with life again. Not noisy or chaotic, just full, lived in, balanced. There were piles of Harper's books on the counter and socks she forgot on the couch. There were faint smells of her cooking and quiet piano music coming from her phone while she worked. There was someone humming while folding towels. One night, I looked at her across the dinner table, me with a spoon of soup I barely managed to lift, her with a tea towel draped over her shoulder, and I realized something. This was what I'd fought for. Not control, not revenge, companionship, warmth. A final chapter that didn't end with me boxed into a room and labeled a burden. And as my body declined, as the days began to blur together, I found something I hadn't had in years: dignity. In the small moments, in the quiet, in being seen, not as a problem, but as a person who still mattered. And that was enough. That morning, I knew, not in a dramatic, thunderstruck kind of way. It was quiet, still. I opened my eyes and felt a strange calm settle into my bones like warm water. My breath came easy. My hands weren't twitching, my legs didn't ache, my mind didn't wander or fight, just stillness. The clock on the wall said 6:17 a.m. A soft wind came through the cracked window. I could hear birds, not many, just 2 or 3. A robin, maybe. Clarice used to call them our morning crew. Harper was already awake. I could hear her in the kitchen, light footsteps, cabinet doors, the hum of the kettle. She always started the day the same way: green tea, a crossword puzzle, a song from a playlist she called Calm But Not Sad. I wanted to see her, not to say anything, just to see her. She must have heard the shift in my breathing, because she appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, mug in hand. Her eyes softened when she looked at me. "Morning," she said quietly. I smiled but didn't speak. She came over and sat beside the bed, her warm hand wrapping gently around mine. "Anything you need?" I shook my head. My voice was mostly gone these days, only good for a whisper if I really tried. I didn't want to try today. I gestured toward the nightstand. She turned and spotted the old blue book sitting there, Tennyson's collected poems. The spine cracked from years of rereading. Clarice's handwriting still marked the inside cover. To Reuben. For every crossing. Harper ran her fingers over the page. "You want me to read it?" I nodded. She opened to the dog-eared corner, cleared her throat, and began. "Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me." Her voice wasn't theatrical or overly gentle. She read it like she'd known the words forever, like she understood that they weren't about leaving, but about arriving. "And may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea." I closed my eyes. The words wrapped around me like a quilt. I could hear the sea in them. I could feel the hush of something closing, but not in sorrow, just peace. Her fingers tightened slightly around mine. I could feel her thumb tracing small circles on the back of my hand. I imagined Clarice in the chair by the window, the lemurs, the zoo staff, Maxine with her blueberry bread, the turtles on the dresser, all here, all close. Twilight and evening bell, and after that, the dark. No fear, no regret. Only the sound of Harper's voice and the rhythm of something larger than me. "And may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark." My chest rose once, then slowly fell. I kept holding her hand. For though from out our bourne of time and place the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. Silence followed the last line. No crying, no panic. Harper didn't speak. She just held on. And in that silence, I drifted, not away but towards something, not afraid, not empty, just grateful. Grateful for the clarity, for the choice, for not being alone in a room with beeping machines or strangers with clipboards, for being in the home I chose, with someone who saw me, not as an obligation, but as a man who still mattered. And as the sun stretched over the window ledge and the scent of tea and lilac filled the room, I let go. Harper stayed there long after, her hand still in mine, and the words of the poem still hung in the air, gentle, final, full of grace.